Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. It's the official podcast of thevikingage.com. My name is Chris Schad. All right, for zone coverage, bring me the news and the Brookings Register. We do this every Monday with a late week episode right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. We're also in podcast form on Apple and Spotify the very next day. But however you consume us, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode and we can spread the word to the masses. Today's co-host, see him on the right side of the screen. He writes for A to Z Sports, co-host of the Meat and Potatoes podcast on Score North, and has flow like an actual Viking. He is Tyler Forness. Welcome back to the show, Forno.
Hey, you know what? It's good to be here, sir. And I just got to say, we got to update that wrestler photo in the background. We got to get you an actual good wrestler on there, and not just average ass Randy Orton. But other than that, life is pretty good, man.
I look at my wrestling like fast food. Like, you know, the double cheeseburger from McDonald's is good every once in a while. So let's just roll with that. I also forgot you also have your own show, The Real Forno Show on YouTube. Check that out as
I
well.
wasn't going to mention that, but I'm like, you mentioned everything I do except my own podcast network, which is wild. But you know what? Forgive and forget. Just like Randy Orton forgetting to sell.
Hey, I like your new stuff. You know, sometimes the new stuff's fresh in my head. The A to Z Sports, you're rocking that. You got Meat and Potatoes on Score North. You know, sometimes even I forget about things that I have to do. Like when I woke up this morning and reminded myself, oh yeah, I got to write an SDSU feature today. That's kind of important. I managed to squeeze it in. But the reason I got you on, we got a big divisional matchup with the Detroit Lions. We're going to go over some of the Vikings injuries and whether some players will return on Sunday. But before we get there, it's Cam Akers Day again. That's right. The Vikings swapped a conditional 6th-round pick for a conditional 7th-round pick with the Houston Texans in exchange for Akers on Tuesday. If this sounds familiar, the Vikings did this trade last September with the Los Angeles Rams. The picks did not exchange in that deal because Akers blew his Achilles last November. The Vikings wanted to bring Akers back in July, but he failed a physical, so they wound up trading for him. It's a lot like, you know, in my Dynasty Fantasy League where I would get mad at a player, I would trade him away and trade back for him a little bit later. I guess they should have brought in the Twins doctors or something. Does this trade mean more about Aaron Jones' hamstring injury or Ty Chandler's ineffectiveness as a backup?
Neither. They just wanted extra depth. They brought in Cam Akers last year for that very reason. Ty Chandler had a really up and down second year. One of Ty Chandler's biggest things is inconsistency with vision and decision making on zone concepts. You get him on like a toss sweep, the couple plays that broke out for decent yardage against the New York Jets. Awesome, but they were called back for 2 penalties. So his stat line looks significantly worse when you have those factored in. But Chandler's really good at, I see the hole, I know I need to hit this hole, and I can explode through it. But he hasn't quite developed a lot of the nuance otherwise. And one of the big things with Chandler was he's always an older player, but he didn't have a lot of tread on the tires. He only had like 600 carries across 5 years in college. And Tennessee didn't really use him. North Carolina used him as more of a bell cow. He has talent, and the Vikings really like that talent. And I don't think this has anything to do with him at all. They just wanted to improve that running back 3 spot and give you extra depth in case Jones was going to miss any time. But they wanted to bring Akers back before training camp. He signed with the Texans. Once the Texans got both Dameon Pierce and Joe Mixon back, the use for Akers was significantly less. And one aspect that doesn't get talked about enough, Chris, Akers' contract is now fully guaranteed. They couldn't cut him and save cap space for any reason. They had to pay him his full contract. So they trade him. Last year's conditions were it was either 400 or 500 yards where Akers needed to hit in order for those pick swap to actually occur. Well, he didn't get it because he tore his Achilles. So that ended up being moot. My guess is it's probably the same thing because if the Texans don't end up getting anything back for him, they got out of the fully guaranteed veteran contract and probably saved around, I don't know, a prorated amount of like $400,000 in cap space, something like that. Not a ton, but that stuff adds up and it adds up really quickly. So The Vikings win. They get a player that really doesn't need much of an introduction back into this offense, and they get extra depth at running back, which is honestly really hard to come by during the middle of the year, which is why having a guy that's already played for you significant amount of snaps makes a difference. And that's what they have.
Yeah, I think everybody was just kind of surprised because it's like, well, why didn't you keep him in the first place? It's like they tried, but
Mhm.
I think being that close to his second Achilles injury, the doctors were kind of like, hey, we don't know what's going on here. This is kind of a way to get everything back. I fixate, and again, Aaron Jones getting hurt. I look at his workload so far. He was getting about 20 carries a game in the first 5 weeks. He's not going to hold up that way at age 30. I know he's in great shape. I know he looks great at this point of the season. That's just not a sustainable recipe for success. And I know if Jones goes down, there have been times where Ty Chandler has kind of lost trust with the coaching staff, whether it's going the wrong way on a play, whether it's, dropping a toss that led to a fumble in the Jets game. There are just little things that kind of add up. So I think Akers might be the best of both worlds. You have a player that you can trust who has been in your system. If you need him to split the load with Chandler a little bit, because I don't think you could just say, hey, Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones is hurt. Here's 25 carries. Go see what you do with him. And to his credit, the one game they did that, he had 125 yards and a touchdown against Cincinnati.
Mhm.
I like this deal because they needed to go get a running back. And like you mentioned, it's not like there's an all-star, Pro Bowl running back available that you're going to want to plug in ahead of Aaron Jones. It's about getting a lesser guy. And I mean, in the future, it might lead the Vikings to look for one in the draft because, I think Janty's going to be out of reach. They're pegging him at 11 to Dallas. God knows if there's willing to do that, but this is a strong running back class coming out. So I think it's an intriguing move for right now with the Vikings 5-0, and also sets up intrigue after the season to see how they acquire that depth.
Yeah, I'm really, really intrigued to see how the Vikings address running back long term. They love Aaron Jones, but let's be real. Aaron Jones does not love Aaron Jones. And I mean that by mentally and physically, they're in two different spots. Jones's body just keeps it's like a car that never has anything major wrong with it, but it keeps having something like, oh, a ball joint is loose. Oh, like one brake caliper stinks. It's always something little, never something big. You don't have a transmission, you don't have an engine that goes faulty. It's always like, oh, my windows don't roll down because this switch is broken. Like I had a 95 Grand Prix when I was in high school and college, and I think I replaced every single electric switch in like the steering wheel column and in my driver's side door. It just bonkers. Good old Pontiacs, right? So that's kind of what you feel like with Jones. And if his body can hold up at all, you have a really good running back who you're not paying a ton of money to. And I think that's a really, really pivotal aspect of this whole conversation is when he's healthy, Jones is very good. And he's been very good for the Minnesota Vikings, both on a overall level and an efficiency metric. He has going into the bye week, the highest success rate of his career. The second highest was last year. So his body has not failed him from an athleticism standpoint, and it's all about durability. And if he can stay durable, you can really help elevate this offense to a different level. And we saw that in the first few weeks. If he misses this Sunday's game, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think he will. I think he'll end up being questionable after Friday's practice, and then we'll kind of see how things go from there. But like the way things are going right now with this team, I'm I think that Jones can really help elevate things continuously. And Chandler's been fine. I mean, he had 82 yards on 10 carries against the San Francisco 49ers. He was gashing them. Like Chandler's not a slouch. He's not an alpha. And I think you need to consider upgrading the room if you're not going to, if Chandler's going to be your guy for a long period of time. I just don't think he's that kind of player. He's a great complementary back. And in the NFL nowadays, complementary backs are pretty valuable pieces. So I think the draft could really easily be a place where the Vikings decide to attack one early. But you can also find starters really late because this running back class is so bonkers loaded. It's insane. There are quality starters you'll probably be able to find around 4 and 5 just because of how deep this running back class is. So, like, guys who maybe would get drafted in round 4 in a normal year may go undrafted. Like, it's just really, really good. So, I'm intrigued to see how they handle it, but let's be real. The Vikings need Aaron Jones to continue the run that they're on, but that's not an insult on Chandler. He's just not at the same level. And you know what? That's okay.
So there's one deal in the books. The Vikings get some depth in the running back room. Kevin O'Connell, talking to reporters on Wednesday, said, hey, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is going to look for ways to improve the team. If the Vikings were to make another deadline move, what's a position that you think they should target?
Defensive tackle. But I also think if you're going to do it, you need to get one of two things. One, a good rotational player for like a 7th round pick, or you need to go and acquire a TJ Hawkinson type player where you're trading for him now, but you plan on him being a focal point of this team for a significant period of time. Meaning, if you acquire a Jeffrey Simmons, you know you're going to have him for at least the next 4 years. Or if you acquire somebody who's a bigger name, like, just for lack of another comparison, because I can't think of anybody from the 2022 class, Chris Olave. Olave has 1 more year on his rookie deal and then a 5th year option. But if you trade for a player like that, you're going to commit to him long term. I think that's the type of move the Minnesota Vikings would make. And Doogie did say earlier on the Scoops podcast on Score North that the brass likes Jeffrey Simmons. Simmons is a very, very good defender, but I don't know where the Titans are at. The offense stinks. That defense is really good. So I don't know if they'd be willing to make a move to get rid of Simmons. And one of the tough parts, I wrote about this for A to Z Sports last night, and it dropped either yesterday or this morning. I don't remember. Everything time-wise just blends in. But the Vikings made a calculated bet to not make a major investment in the defensive line last year in free agency or the draft, with the idea being the defensive line class for free agency was projected to be really, really good. And so was the NFL draft class. Now, the draft class still looks really good. But all of the really big name guys that you would have maybe expected to be available, they all signed extensions. Every one of them. And that significantly depletes. So a guy like Osa Odigizua from the Dallas Cowboys, who I really like, you may have to overpay that guy to get him in the building. Now, you have the flexibility to because of the rookie contract with JJ McCarthy, but you don't want to overpay unless you absolutely have to. So I think a trade might be the best route. And you know what? It means you punt your draft class this year, you know what? Punt your draft class this year because you're getting an elite player to help you potentially win a Super Bowl. And I'll say this, if a trade nets you a Super Bowl, there is no price too high to pay for that player. No price. None. You get a Super Bowl. That is why the Rams gave up Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks for Matthew Stafford. Nothing matters after 2021. Why? They got a Super Bowl. That's all that matters. They got a Super Bowl.
And remember, too, I think people looked at the Rams and went, what are you doing? Like, why you're trading another first for Jalen Ramsey? Like, why do you keep reloading? Well, if you win, and again, that's a huge caveat, you have to win after you do this. It gets you to the Super Bowl, which, by the way, the Vikings haven't been there for 40 years. Like, I remember the Jalen Ramsey conversation. A lot of people were like, he'd be great on this team, but then it costs too much. They let him go to the Rams and he wins a ring over in Los Angeles. Like, do you think the Vikings, because it sounds to me, you think that if a move is made, it would be one like the TJ Hawkinson trade where they identified a guy that could be a long-term fixture in the offense. You pay him, you commit to him, and he becomes a fixture of the team. Like, is this team at 5-0 worth, or even let's say they lose on Sunday, let's say they're 5-1. Mm-hmm. Maybe Sam Darnold doesn't look as good as he's looked, for most of the year. Is this a team that you would commit to and be like, all right, full Rams, let's go, let's deal them? Because remember, everybody thought the Rams were going to suck for 5 years because they had no draft picks. They were a playoff team last year. Now they suck again, but part of that's because of injuries. But I think those are all the things you have to consider right now.
I don't necessarily think it would be going full Rams to make that trade. Let's say you give up this year's first and a 2026 third to get Jeffrey Simmons. you'd have a third and 2/5 this year. It would be a historically small draft class, but the way the Vikings have done a really good job. I mean, look, 2022, we can talk about Booth and Scene not hitting, but Ingram's been a solid player. Jalen Naylor, 6th round, solid player. Ty Chandler, 5th round, solid player. Caleb Evans gave you 2 really solid years as a starting corner. Now he's a good depth piece and special teamer, albeit he had an awful game against the New York Jets. Like, that's not exactly a horrific draft class. Plus, Nick Muse has been a solid number 3 tight end as a 7th round pick. You have some decent players. You'd like to get more production from your higher end guys, including Brian Osimo, who's still on the team, but it's not this historically awful class like conventional wisdom might tell you. And then you have Jay Ward, who's a good backup 4th round pick last year. Mekhi Blackman was supposed to be a real key piece to this franchise, and he tore his ACL, so he's out for the year. Addison's been great. Dallas Turner looks like he's the real deal. Same with JJ McCarthy. And Will Reichard looks like a tremendous kicker acquisition. Like, the Vikings have done okay with drafting. And what people forget is you want to look at a class and be like, oh, these are all hits. It's not how it works. This is not the 2017 Saints draft class, which might go down but when it's all said and done, is the best draft class of all time. Marshawn Lattimore, trending Hall of Famer. Ryan Ramczyk, you could argue before the injury, trending Hall of Famer. Trey Hendrickson is like a top 3 edge rusher in the league right now. Alvin Kamara, potential Hall of Famer. Like, I mentioned 3 guys where you could at least consider the Hall of Fame for all 3 and in one way, shape, or form. That says something. That is a tremendous draft class. Not everybody has that. You're going to have a lot of misses. Even 1st round picks, half of them miss. Like, it's a very difficult, inexact science to really be able to manipulate. So if the Vikings get a sure thing in Jeffrey Simmons, yes, you have to pay him. Yes, you wouldn't be able to make those picks, but you'd still have 3 draft picks to help fortify the roster. You have a lot of young players that have been playing real big minutes and guys who are ready to step up into other roles. It would not be the worst thing ever to have one year where you kind of punt the draft. The Vikings did that in 2008 when they acquired Jared Allen. They traded a 1st and 2/3 to get him. How much of an impact did Jared Allen make for this Vikings team? A massive one. Massive. The only hit they had in that draft class was John Sullivan, the center, 6th round. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Would I recommend having that shallow of a draft pool? No. But you also have to consider Jeffrey Simmons is a part of that draft class. And if you were to get him, what that would mean for your team this year, next year, and moving forward. It makes you more versatile in the pass rush. It makes you better in the run game. It just makes you so much better. And this defense is already 1st in the league in EPA per play allowed, 1st in success rate allowed. They're bonkers. Now you add a freaky talent like Simmons, buddy. Hello. Yes, please. I'm in. I would expect if they make a trade, it's one of those 2, though, to wrap this all up. Big name that's going to be here for a long time, or a guy you trade a 7th round-ish pick for, who's a good rotational player that can help you in the trenches.
And remember, like our good friend Thor Nystrom likes to point out, the Vikings, JJ McCarthy was coming out in this class. He might be considered the number 1 overall pick because there's not really a quarterback out there that looks good. Sorry, Shador. It also would be kind of humorous to me because the guy the Vikings took, Garrett Bradbury, has been thrown around by guys like Jeffrey Simmons since they selected him. So that would just be kind of funny and ironic for me to see them trade for him. You know what else the Vikings could do, though, is they could take another page out of the Twins playbook and say, it's just like a trade. We got TJ Hawkinson coming back from the PUP list. KOC basically told your meat and potatoes co-host, Judge Zolgad, 2 days and 4 games isn't a factor for his return, but it is a factor. Mm-hmm. Should TJ Hawkinson return against the Lions?
Is he ready?
No,
because it's not a health issue at this point. Kevin O'Connell also elaborated in that it's a football issue. Is he ready and comfortable doing all the things? Is he in a mentally great spot to be able to do everything that we need? Because remember, a lot of coming back from a knee injury is mental, not physical. Your knee can be structurally sound, but that does not mean you can mentally do all of the things that you need to do. I remember one of my favorite shows ever is Friday Night Lights. And in Friday Night Lights, Smash Williams, like, because they had season 2 was the strike shortened season, so they cut it off in the playoffs. Well, the first episode of season 3, they give you a synopsis of what happened at the end of the previous year. Smash tore his ACL, and he wants to play football, but he just mentally, he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So they kind of get him in there in like a full contact scrimmage where he goes and he does it, and he just stops thinking and lets his body take over. That kind of mental block does exist for athletes. So being able to see that not only he physically is capable of doing it, but see him do it without hesitating. Those are the things that they're looking for here. And if he does all that, play him. If he doesn't play against the Rams, that's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world if he plays against the Lions and doesn't play against the Rams, because, hey, you know what? He's healthy, but he played a lot of snaps and we're not going to, force things. Okay, fine. I get it. If he's ready, just play him and don't think twice about it. You can always hold him out the next game if, like, maybe the knee swells up a little bit or he's just got some lingering soreness. That's fine. If you know that the knee is ready and he is ready, just play him.
I think it's just bad luck with the schedule, really, because in a perfect world, you're playing the Lions. It's an NFC North divisional game. You would like to be at full strength, but you also have this game 4 days later. So whether it is, hey, we're going to wait and hold them out until the Rams game, or we're going to play them on Sunday, I don't expect him to play both. But again, like you said, if he's good to go mentally, if he's good to go physically, get him out there. See what's going on. See if he's ready to go. Maybe it's a limited snap count against the Lions where maybe, okay, he's out there, he's kind of leery. You also have, the Kirby Joseph factor where maybe the Lions are going to look at him and go, okay, fresh meat. Not that I don't think the Lions like go out there like we're going to tear some ACLs, even though their head coach did say bite kneecaps. But I mean, they're a physical team. Every team, the Vikings are a physical team. I don't think they're trying to hurt anybody, but you see guys go off the field all the time in NFL games. So I don't know. It's a very liberal balance. I mean, one of the things I was going to ask you is, Brian Flores said during his press conference, you got to fight fire with fire when it comes to Ben Johnson's offense. Do you think the Vikings, is this a game where you use caution with your injured players? We know Blake Cashman, got baseball on the brain. Blake Cashman's not going to play because of a turf toe. Hawkinson's kind of on the fence. We got Jones. We talked about him a little bit. Is this a game where maybe, hey, it's a long season. We got 12 games without a bye. We got a mini bye, but we're pretty much rested anyway by the time that hits. Like, what do you think the Vikings should do with all of their injured players in this game?
Play them if they're ready. Play them if they're ready. Don't think twice about it. I'm not going to hold a guy out or play a guy because, this team is on the schedule. If they're ready and they're healthy, play them. If you're worried about lingering effects, then sit them. That's simple. I'm not worried about a guy like Kirby Joseph who, you know what? It's not going to be a popular answer. That wasn't a dirty hit on Hawkinson. It's just awful. It sucks. It ain't dirty. They don't want you to, it's kind of the NFL rules. They don't want you to hit high. They want you to hit low because they want to eliminate concussions. Well, guess what? You hit low, knee injuries happen. It's football. People need to stop being babies about it. It's football. The guy went and tried to tackle Hawkinson. He hit the knee. The foot was in the ground. That shit happens. It sucks. But you know what? It's football. Get over it. Wasn't a dirty hit. It wasn't a dirty hit the next week when he did the same thing to Tyler Higbee. He's doing what he's told to do, what he's coached to do. Aim for the legs. It's not dirty. It's a reality of the NFL focusing on concussions. And you know what? Maybe they're going too far with the concussion thing because they ignored it for decades. They even made a movie with Will Smith where they basically ripped the NFL to shreds for not believing in the concussion data and not doing anything about it. So I really am not concerned about the idea of them hurting our players. I think it's a bunch of hogwash, honestly. If they're healthy, play them. If you're concerned, don't hold them out or put them on a pitch count. it's the whole thing to me is just overblown. And I'm honestly really excited to see this game. I'm really excited to uh, watch these two coordinators go back and forth against each other. But some of the injury stuff, I don't know. You can miss me with it. I'm not going to play into those narratives because I don't believe in them.
The last one I got for you, injury related, is Dalton Reisner. His practice window has been all activated. Ed Ingram has struggled at right guard. What do you think the odds are he, maybe not on Sunday, because it doesn't sound like that's going to happen, but does he make his way into the starting lineup at some point? Or do the Vikings, again, kind of circling back to that trade steam, do they find a guard at the deadline? Maybe in the same way they traded away Ezra Cleveland last year.
No, I don't think Reisner is going to start. I don't think he's good enough to start. And I think the Vikings agree with me. Here's why I think the Vikings agree with me. One, they could have had him in February, in March, in April. Guess what? They didn't. They signed him in mid-May when nobody else wanted to. They got him for a really cheap deal. And if they move on from him, they can cut his cap hit in more than half. He's on a contract that is easy to get out of. Two, they said, oh, he's going to compete for the starting guard jobs. He was in practice for about 2.5 weeks before he hurt his back. Dalton Reisner never took one single snap with the first team. In order for it to be a competition, Chris, you got to compete. And he didn't. He didn't compete. It was Ingram and it was Brandel. Three, the Vikings are asking this offensive line to play at an extremely high level. What do I mean by that? They are top 5 in time to pressure. Sam Darnold's number 2 in time to throw. And with all that, they're asking these receivers to run like 15-yard dig routes, 20-yard dig routes, long developing routes, which means the Vikings offensive line has to block. They're 9th in pass block win rate, according to ESPN. And in order to register on pass block win rate, you have to hold your block for over 2.5 seconds. Vikings are asking these guys to hold it for 3, 4, and 5 seconds. And they're doing it at a good level. Not all pressures are created equal. Ed Ingram's credited with 17. Garrett Bradbury's credited with 13. Vikings are credited with 53 total. Not all pressures are created equal, because if you allow pressure after 5 seconds, I don't care. It's 5 seconds. You did a good job. You did your job and then some. If you allow pressure in 1 second, catastrophic. The Vikings are not allowing a lot of catastrophic pressures. They're allowing 3, 4, 5 second pressures. And you know what? If they do that, that's fine, because I'm asking them to play at this extremely high level that has an incredible difficulty, and they're still doing it. Plus, the run blocking is so good from Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, they're not replacing him. They're just not. And I don't think when people look at some of those hyper stats like, oh, PFF grade 29.1, one of the reasons why his grade is so low is because some of his losses can look really bad. And it's partially due to his play style. He has a play style like Mike Tyson. He wants to punch you in the mouth and knock you on your butt. Well, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes he whiffs. Sometimes he pushes you back and that guy makes a tackle. Well, guess what? He's doing his job, but it just doesn't work out the way he intended it to. Like, some of those things in context matter. And I don't think people with the offensive line, because it's so boring and monotonous to watch, they don't want to take the time to understand that context. And that's where people like us have to really enforce that context and explain some of those things. And I think the offensive line's been really good. It's viewed as one of the best units in the National Football League. Ed Ingram might be the weakest link, but he's not this abject disaster, Chris. He's fine. He's objectively fine. You know what? PFF grades, especially with offensive line, are not gospel. You have to look at these guys play, and you have to understand what they're doing. And especially, you have to understand how long it takes for them to allow pressure, which it takes the fourth or fifth longest for the opposing team to get pressure. That is the biggest stat. If it takes them 3.2 seconds or whatever to get pressure, that's a high level of offensive line play. And I think people still haven't gotten over the fact that Ingram allowed 63 pressures in his rookie year, 42 last year, and they see those numbers like, Ingram bad, we need to replace him. No, you need to understand the context of what's going on, because I guarantee you, a lot of the people that are yelling this kind of stuff, they're not taking that context. You know what? They
Go
don't
ahead.
have to, but then you can't whine about it if you don't want to understand the context behind it.
To your point, I do wonder too, how much does Garrett Bradbury play into this? Where I don't know what I'm trying to look up interior pass block win rates on ESPN right now, but they only have the top 20 listed, it looks like. So, I mean, sometimes I wonder too, like, how do they know like who to charge a pressure with? Because it could be somebody else on the offensive line not doing their job, where it just looks like Ed Ingram's getting mowed over again. You can kind of look that way.
Yeah. I think Bradbury has his own issues, but they've done a really good job of mitigating it. And one of the things, like when you look at 2021 Bradbury and then 2022 and 2023 Bradbury, he's doing a better job of not getting bulldozed, not getting forklifted. He's playing with better technique. He's getting under guys' shoulder pads better, which, hey, low man wins. It's a leverage game. And he had a couple reps against the Eagles last year where he forklifted Jordan Davis, the second best weight adjusted athlete of all time, according to Relative Athletic Score. Number one, Calvin Johnson, Megatron. Like, these guys are fine. You're going to have to moneyball somewhere. You're going to have to take chances. And they have continuity with these guys. They're playing at a capable enough level. Like, Bradbury's like the 16th best center out of 36 in PFF, if you want to use those metrics. Like, that's average. You're paying $5.25 million average annual value to get an average level center. That's fine. Because you know what? This team is 5-0. It's fine.
So with the offensive line looking good, with the defensive line looking good, we look ahead to the Lions. But first, I want to tell you all about Underdog Fantasy. Football is back and it is here to stay. Over 3 million fans across 33 states got into the game last year by making picks on Underdog, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite player stats like touchdowns, passing yards, and more. Maybe you want to add a little excitement to Sunday's game. Maybe you want to pick Jordan Addison to get more than 50 and a half receiving yards and Amon-Ra St. Brown to have higher than 75 and a half receiving yards. You can win 3 times your money just like that, and I think I will be doing the same. All you have to do is just head over to Underdog, simple to use mobile app, or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code THEAGE, which is all one word, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus a $1,000 bonus cash match when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy promo code THEAGE, all one word, to claim your new customer special of a free pick in your deposit offer. You must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, and 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply, void in Colorado. If you are concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And if you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. All right. Vikings and Lions, Sunday, 12 p.m. at US Bank Stadium. The Vikings favored by 1.5 as of Thursday afternoon. Adam Amin, Greg Olsen, and Pam Oliver will be on the call for Fox. It's not the A team, but I'm not sure how Tom Brady's going to do his job anyway. Now with all, can you believe that? By the way, all the ownership things that are going on.
If I'm Fox, I'm pissed. He's basically worthless at this point as a broadcaster. The only thing he has, he's Tom Brady. That's it. Like, he doesn't get any of the access as a broadcaster. He doesn't get to go to practice. He doesn't get to talk to them. Nothing. He's worthless.
They should just put him on Raiders games for the rest of his contract. All
They're
right, here you go.
And you know what? They're not even going to get all Raiders games.
Yeah.
They're paying him nearly $20 million to do half the job. They can't be happy with this. I'm not happy with this because you know what? Tom Brady calling these games is going to be objectively worse because he's not going to be able to have some of that inside stuff, or he knows to look for these things. He's not going to have any of that. And it sucks. And if I'm Greg Olsen, I'm pissed.
Oh yeah.
Because he got knocked down, and I believe somebody said, and I'm not 100% sure, but his contract went from like $10 million a year to $2 million a year because he's now in the B team instead of the A team, which don't ask me how that works, but
Yeah.
bonkers, man. It's Tom Brady is an empty suit at this point, and it sucks. It sucks for everybody.
He's one of those guys too, I think, and Adams mentioned this before too, where he looks like a guy that's like better on podcasts where he can kind of free flow and think and all that stuff. Whereas when he's in the booth, I make this joke all the time. It's like he's buffering. Like, hey, that was a great play by the linebacker there. Sometimes you have to force that in and it's more yards on. Like, it's just like, all right, dude. Yeah, I know John Madden, keep it simple, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, yeah, I don't know when you're not in the meetings and everything else. And I guess he's just gonna watch tape until his eyes bleed, like Mike Zimmer. I don't know. But the good news is, if you're staying at home because the ticket prices are through the damn roof right now, you don't have to deal with them. Vikings Lions. What are you looking forward to the most in Sunday's game?
It's a great question. What am I looking forward to most? I want to see how the Vikings handle the Lions rush offense. So I was doing some research in neutral situations. So you take the win probability from 0 or from just between 10 and 90%. So you want to try and see how they play within the context of a normal-ish game script. All right. The Vikings have the far and away the best defense per EPA per play. The Lions have the best EPA when running the ball at 0.203. That's insane for running the ball. It's nearly double their passing EPA. So their dropback EPA is 13th in the league at 0.107. They're nearly double as efficient running the ball than they are throwing the ball in neutral game script situations. Let that sink in for a second. It says anti-nerd stuff. They're just at this insane clip. The Vikings, when it comes to rush EPA and success rate, all right, they're second in the league and now a negative 0.349 points per play against the run game. And in success rate, they're fifth in the league at just 33.3% of runs against them being successful. It's going to be a battle. Not having Cashman, I think, is a bigger deal than some might think, but he's going to be a bigger loss in the pass game than the run game because of his ability and coverage. And that's going to give an opportunity to Camus Grugier-Hill, who's already has 2 interceptions on the year, to step in and make an impact. I'm really intrigued to see how these two go against each other, and can the Lions offensive line really bully the Vikings defensive line? I don't know.
And this might be their first big test against the run, because New York, you have Devin Singletary. San Francisco, they had to face Jordan Mason, who's been pretty good this year, but I mean, it's not Christian McCaffrey. Then you have Cam Akers for Houston, didn't really do much. You had, Josh Jacobs, but Green Bay fell behind 28-0 in that game, so they had to play Jordan Love, Brett Favre ball the rest of the second half. And then the Jets have struggled just all over the place because they're basically the 2010 Vikings. Montgomery and Gibbs, they're a problem for anything. And then if you stop them, you have to stop the rest. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown is a Vikings killer at this point of his career, just as much as Justin Jefferson has killed the Lions on the other end. You have, other guys. Sam Laporta hasn't been targeted a lot. They haven't played much with him on the field, but he can still hurt you. Like, then you have Ben Johnson at the controls. I think Ben Johnson against Brian Flores overall is going to be super fun to watch. And I don't know, like Brian Flores sounds like he's going to throw the kitchen sink on Sunday. Ben Johnson's probably going to put, offensive linemen at wide receivers and piss off everybody with Sam Laporta as their fantasy tight ends. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting when the Lions have the ball on Sunday.
I agree. I think it's going to be fascinating to kind of watch and see how it all profiles throughout the next few days. Look, this is going to be a very interesting game. It's for NFC North supremacy. I personally can't wait. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think there's really only so much you can say about this before letting these guys kind of get on the field, because both teams are so good in so many different areas. But I think the edge could be the Vikings run defense being able to take out the Lions rush offense. If they can do that, I think that's going to win them the game.
What do you think of the Vikings offense against the Vikings defense, though? You got Aiden Hutchinson out because of that bad broken leg injury we saw on Sunday. They still got enough guys to kind of get the job done there, but are you worried about Sam Darnold? Are you worried about the pass protection? Like, what do you think about the Vikings offense against the Lions defense?
I'm intrigued at how they're going to get pressure. I'm intrigued because not just the way their defense is set up is different. So in college, they have a lot of teams will run like a 3-3-5 and they'll have the jack linebacker who's more of your pass rusher. And the Lions have 3 down linemen and a rush end, and that is Aiden Hutchinson. But Marcus Davenport is also out for the year. They really don't have anything as a rush end. And the way that defense is set up, they need that guy. So how are they going to be able to generate pressure? Are they Vikings going to be able to do something like put Josh Oliver out there to block the rush end and then have Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill kick down inside and help block the interior guys and make it harder? I think the Lions might be more apt to blitz, and then that can make things a lot easier for the Vikings. Justin Jefferson has been insane against the Lions over the course of his career. Will he be able to keep that up? I would assume so. I can't wait. This is going to be such a fantastic game to watch. It's a lot of little chess matches, and generating pass rush is going to be huge for the Lions because can they do it without Hutch? I don't know.
It's got the vibe of, you have a good wrestling feud. It's been brewing over months. The time for talk is over. They're going to deal it with it. Some people would deal with it in the ring. We're going to deal with it on the football field. Mm-hmm. When the two teams see each other on Sunday, who comes out on top?
I think the Vikings do. I think they win by a touchdown, like 27-20. I think they're going to do enough to rattle Jared Goff. I think they're going to do enough to contain these Lions weapons, who I'm really not that scared of on an overall level. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is slightly overrated because I think he's just a slot and scheme merchant. I think Sam Laporta is a merchant of Ben Johnson as well. Like Laporta, they don't ever ask him to like win one-on-one. They're asking him to go to a spot and you're going to be wide open. You're going to get the ball and run with it. Jameson Williams has had some zoom moments this year. It took him 3 years to get there. We'll see if he's legit against what Brian Flores likes to do to some of these receivers. I'm a little worried about David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. That's probably the one area where I really am concerned. I'm not super worried about the weapons on the outside, but on an overall level, Ben Johnson's very good at what he does. And it doesn't matter if these guys are overrated at all, if Ben Johnson can put them in positions to succeed, because that's the big thing. And I think the Vikings will make 1 or 2 more plays because they're at home and they will squeak out a victory.
Jared Goff under pressure this year hasn't been great. And I made my prediction before I saw Aaron Jones was practicing. I didn't think he was going to play. I think now that he's on the field and practicing, I think that's trending upward. And like you said, I think it'll be a questionable designation on Friday and maybe he plays. Screw it. I'm going to switch it around. Vikings 26, Lions 20. That home crowd at US Bank Stadium, they absolutely tortured CJ Stroud the last time the Vikings played at home. I don't think Jared Goff has the mental capacity to deal with an environment like the one he's going to be dealing in, mainly because I will be in attendance. 26-20 Vikings over the Lions, 6-0, going to LA, where they have, what is it in Star Wars? Padawan and Jedi, whatever, Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell.
Master and apprentice.
There you go. Somebody's going to get their legs chopped off on national television. I don't know. But outside of graphic examples, you got the Real Forno show, Tyler. You got A to Z Sports, and you got Meat and Potatoes. What's going on all over those endeavors you got going on?
Oh, yeah, man. We have a lot of stuff going on every Monday and Wednesday night at 6:05 Central Time on the Real Forno Show YouTube channel. Next morning on podcast feed. We also had a bonus episode on Tuesday talking with Dalton Wasserman at PFF, trying to understand some of the nuances behind like Ed Ingram's grades. And I think he gave us some really good information, especially because he was a grader for 3 years for Pro Football Focus, and that gives you an insight that you're not going to hear many other places. A to Z Sports always doing stuff. Really, really like writing over there. I can write about whatever I want whenever I want to write it, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Um, yeah, I'm really excited for this game and to talk about it and try and figure out who's going to get this win. I think the Vikings will, which is wild because you probably wouldn't have predicted that, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago.
Here's the one thing that I've been looking at. A couple weeks ago, looking Vikings Lions game. Maybe I'll go to that. Price was $120. As of right now, it's $260. People are fired up. Everybody wants to see this game. And right now, it's an early contender for game of the year, don't you think? Or at least for the Viking season.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article talking about how I think they should flex it instead of Jets versus Steelers. But now you have Devontae Adams debuting, and historically, the Jets and Steelers are two very strong national markets. So Lions Vikings, even though it might be the sexier game, might not be as appealing to a national audience as Jets Steelers would be, which feels kind of weird to say, but I think we are in this we love football bucket where they have to think as network executives, they have to think about what an average guy is going to want to watch. And are they going to want to watch Vikings Lions? Are they going to want to watch Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson? I think they're going to pick Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson almost every time because of that just general fan knowledge and what they want to watch. So I think it has a chance to be game of the year. I also think, Vikings Niners and Vikings Texans and Vikings Packers also had that kind of potential, but this one feels different. It feels more important.
And sometimes that's not a bad thing. Space it out. I loved having Ravens Commanders at noon because it's like, okay, there's a cool game on that I want to watch. Then you have another cool game at 3:15. Then you have it, you got an all day football feast where as opposed to, oh, I got to watch the Jaguars and the Patriots in London in the morning. And then I have to watch, I don't know, the Browns and whoever they're playing. Just give me something good at all three windows and we'll be okay. So I am looking forward to it. I know you are too, Tyler. This is the Viking Age podcast. He is Tyler Forness at The Real Forno. You can check out his show, The Real Forno Show, every Monday, like he was talking about, as well as check out his work at A to Z Sports and Meat and Potatoes on Score North. I am Chris Schad at The Real Chris Schad. We do this every Monday with a late week episode right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel, and we're in podcast form the following day on Apple and Spotify. But however you consume us, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode. For Tyler Forness, I am Chris Schad. This has been the Viking Age Podcast.